My mom always said I learned things the hard way. To say I was a stubborn child is the understatement of the century. When I was too young to know how to tie my shoes, I insisted on trying anyways and threw so many tantrums that my parents were forced to buy me Velcro shoes for their own sanity. On my first attempt to juggle the soccer ball at age 5 with my feet, I told my mom and sister I would not leave the park until I could juggle to 10. I remember trying my best, watching my mom and sister sit in our dark car as night began to come until I would finish, but I didn't. Surprisingly, my mom would allow my friends and I to climb our neighbors' fences to steal lemons off their trees, but she did say to go through the gates, not over the gates, so we wouldn't break them. But I have scars on my foot and in my knee to prove that it was more fun to go over them than through them. On a more serious note, this trait of stubbornness led to some pretty difficult, trying times in my life, but along the bumpy road, much was learned. I was a pretty good kid up and through my middle school years, but inside I was much more of an angsty teen than anybody knew. Since I was a small girl, I had faithfully prayed for my dad to be healed of his blindness, but healing hadn't come. So as a result, I was beginning to distance myself from God and from my family. At this point, I was beginning to progress in my soccer career and got invited into a regional and national team camp that summer, instead of going to Hume Lake Christian camps, which I've been to every single year since I was 8 years old. But God had other plans for me. I got a pretty significant concussion that year that lasted over a year long. I was in a pretty dark place, literally and spiritually, for a few months. I went from being a full-fledged athlete to a sad, sedentary girl that couldn't exercise. It seemed like a tragedy to me, but God used it for good. Because now, with all this free time on my hands, I was able to go to Hume Lake after all. So on the bus ride to Hume Lake, I met the most significant person in my life, other than my family. Ronan and I have been dating for over 4 years now, and he helped me to see the light at the end of the tunnel. He also helped draw me out of that dark place I was in and get closer to God. In hindsight, I'm thankful for this bump in the road, because without the pain and suffering I endured at that time, I wouldn't be who I am today. That isn't to say that I suddenly learned how to do things the easy way. Spring of my sophomore year of high school, I committed to Pepperdine to play soccer. It was the easiest decision in my life. All the hard work had finally paid off. 4 years of traveling 6 to 7 hours for 2-hour practices twice a week, and then twice over the weekend, all over California and the nation, was all worth it, and everything was settled. Or so I thought. Senior year, 2 weeks before National Signing Day, and I hit a roadblock. Signing didn't look that fun to me anymore, and neither was soccer. Everyone advised me to just play out my senior year of high school soccer and try to have fun. Nope, I was done. I was so extremely burnt out. That old stubbornness was still there. No ifs, ands, or buts. The hardest part was telling my Pepperdine coaches the decision I had made, but they showed me an incredible amount of grace and told me that if I ever had a change of heart, there would always be a spot for me back here at Pepperdine. To them, I would always be a wave. One semester at Point Loma, one rad spirit-filled church, 4 months of adventuring with my sister and my boyfriend, the best burritos of my life, 12 months without soccer, and my road takes a giant turn and I say goodbye to San Diego. God's timing is funny, and he waits for us to catch up with his plan for us. 1 year to the day I decommitted from Pepperdine, I find myself at Pepperdine NSO, moving into a new dorm and starting the life I had put on hold just 1 year before. I may do things the hard way, but I wouldn't want to do them any other way. Because without this year-long detour, I would have missed learning so much about myself. And I found that God was always with me on this road of self-discovery. And he used my stubbornness for good to produce perseverance. One of my favorite Bible verses is Romans 5:3, which says, "We rejoice in suffering, because suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us." I feel like God used my God used my weaknesses and sufferings to help produce perseverance in my life as well as trust his path that he had for me. Ironically, Brianna is the Celtic word for strong. On my own, this can mean stubbornness, self-sufficiency, and physical strength. But when I allow God to step in, strong can mean so much more. Perseverance, character, and faith in him. I choose to live my life with God directing my path, bumps and all.